Good morning, everyone. What we might do is we'll give a few minutes for people to join. Just want to say a big thank you for coming along and welcome to our webinar. This webinar is going to be about Power BI Premium to Microsoft Fabric migration, which is part of our Success Factors series that we run here fairly regularly, just sharing some of the insights from our past delivery with our customers and prospects. I hope you all have had a really nice long weekend and ready for the week ahead and probably on your second or third coffee by now. So before we get started, just to get some housekeeping cleared, this is going to be a recorded session. So recordings will be posted up on YouTube and LinkedIn. It's a 1 hour session with some question time in the end, and we can type that into the chat as you go along, and some of them might be aggregated. And there will be some polling on the way through as well. So if we need to run over in question time, Geoff and I will have that capacity. So if at the end of the day you want any specific follow-ups, by all means, let us know. We'd be happy to help. So just to do a quick check, Geoff, you can see my screen. Yep.
Yes, yep.
Terrific. All right. So with that out the way, let's jump in. So my name is Artem Simdikov. I look after sales for Revenite, and with me is Geoff Morgan, who heads up delivery.
Yes, thanks, Artie. Morning, everyone. I'm Geoff Morgan, Director of Delivery at Revenite. Really appreciate you making the time for this webinar.
Thanks, Geoff. So look, for those that don't know, Revenite is a specialist data and analytics consulting business. We've operated out of Melbourne now for the better part of 7 years. We've got a specific focus on delivering Microsoft and Databricks stack work for our customers, and everything ranging from design, deployment, migrations, data engineering, and development of assets like data models and reports for our customers as well. So often businesses look to us for help around patterns and methods to help them standardize some of the work that they do. Some of what we're talking about today is really informed by our past Fabric delivery as well. So looking at the agenda for today, we've got a handful of things to cover. What we're going to do first and foremost is just to briefly recap the Power BI licensing and give an overview and get a better understanding of whether or not you will be impacted by the upcoming push to Fabric that Microsoft's instantiated. We'll go through some of the key migration considerations that Geoff and I talked to customers about when we're planning these migrations in the past. And then we'll look at what the post-migration period would look like for you and your business once you're actually landed in Fabric as well. But first and foremost, what I'd like to do is just to trigger a poll just to understand where you're currently at in your Fabric journey. So if you want to just take a second to let us know if you are still taking the time to learn about it or have started to actually experiment with some of the Fabric features today, or if you're a few streets ahead and using Fabric in production already. So as you're doing that, I'll move to the licensing view. So just as a quick refresher, for those that don't know, Power BI has actually been around now for over a decade. So through that time, licensing has obviously chopped and changed and grown substantially. But these sort of are the key 4 tiers that we see our customers use, although there are others. So just by way of recap, the free version is where people start most often. And if you sort of consider that, imagine you're an analyst, you've just joined a rapidly growing software business. This is where you would typically start. You might be, employee number 5, working really closely with co-founders to help figure out data insights to help steer the business and help scale. You might not have many data hires. You might be the data hire. So all of your sharing and collaboration features are really going to be minimized in the free version. It's really best thought of as a personal Power BI license. And in this example that I've given, if you're sitting across the desk from somebody, turning your screen and showing them the insights, that might be the extent of your collaboration sessions. So for that, chances are you're going to be using Power BI free. Now, imagine you've been in this business for a year. You're a bigger company now, and you've taken on some private equity and scaled. So all of a sudden, you're acting in a senior data role. You might have a junior reporting to you. Your use case is likely going to be a little bit different. In a bigger business, you're expected to share reports. You're obviously expected to collaborate with other team members. So you might want to upgrade to Pro in that instance, where you might have multiple individuals that you are collaborating with, creating reports, and then sharing those reporting assets too. Now, with Power BI Pro, you can share content on workspaces that are actually sitting in premium capacity or on Fabric F64 SKUs or higher as well. So there is a handshake into some of the Pro content creator licenses and consumption licenses with the overall Fabric picture as well. So a few more years now have passed. You guys are going gangbusters, opening up offices left, right, and center. And all of a sudden, your data team has swollen to about 10 people. The co-founders are still in the business, but the use cases, once again, are more complicated still. Let's imagine you've called Jeff and I and taken on a couple of data scientists to help you accelerate advanced analytics. What that means is you're running into use cases that require additional refreshes, over and above the 8 per day that Pro offers. You've got much larger data models and data sets that you're working with, well beyond the sort of 10 gig mark. So at this stage, what you might want to do is access some premium services without buying into the full capacity stack. So in that instance, we see our customers have a mix often of PPU, premium per user, and Pro licenses in an organization. Now, fast forward some more, and now you're a business that's 1,000 strong, with international presence, and you've got users, consumers across sales, finance, marketing, constantly demanding fresh insights. So the big emphasis on centralization and really starting to scale some of the analytics through the business. So this is most often where businesses find themselves looking at Microsoft premium capacities, or PSKUs as they're called. What PSKUs allow you to do is both Pro and per user licenses to be able to share and collaborate with a premium subscription. And you can now start to host things on workspaces across the entire enterprise while centralizing all of your administrative assets. You can probably hear some of the language almost mirror how Microsoft is portraying Fabric in the market, this unified, centralized layer designed to get everybody collaborating off sort of a central platform. This is now, starting to get into the territory where you've got teams, multiple use cases, and Microsoft might all of a sudden email you out of the blue and say, guess what? Your PSKUs are going to be deprecated and you're now going to Fabric, which is probably why you're here. So let's go through and figure out if you're a premium user, whether or not you're going to be impacted. I hope the refresher was useful. What I'll do is I'll trigger another poll just for us to better understand whether you know which Power BI license your organization currently uses. So you can select multiples here. You'll see that pop up on your screen in just a second. So the question is, at this point, when should you move? Now, if you're a new Power BI Premium customer and you are just at the point of transitioning from Power BI Pro or PPU onto a proper PSKU, as of, I think, February of this year, you are not able to do that at all. So you cannot purchase Power BI Premium SKUs, and you have to choose a corresponding Fabric SKU if you want to access some of those premium features I touched on earlier. So in this case, if you're just transitioning, Microsoft makes it a very clear story. You're going to go to Fabric and you're going to have to size up a proper Fabric SKU. And we'll help you have that conversation in just a second. Now, if you're a Power BI Premium customer already, but you don't have an enterprise agreement today, that's fine. You can still continue to use your Power BI Premium capacity service. What you'll want to do is go into the administration portal and have a look at the date to which your premium capacity has been effectively purchased to. That's going to be your cutoff period to migrate over to Fabric. Because at the end of that, you will not be able to refresh your PSKU capacity at all. Now, if you are at this particular point, you once again, you'll probably be considering something like an enterprise agreement or in discussions with your Microsoft stakeholders today. At times, there is a 30-day, I think, grace period applied at the end of that PSKU termination date. But our suggestion is you might want to start planning your migration well in advance. Now, if you're currently a premium customer and you've got an EA, you might still have that EA extend, 2, 3, in some extended cases, up to 5 years in the future. You can still, as of today, renew your Power BI premium capacity annually, all the way up until the end of your enterprise agreement, at the end of which Microsoft is once again exceedingly clear. You will then have to transition over to Fabric. So Microsoft's message here is very clear. Fabric is going to be the unified, sort of eminent Microsoft-centric suite of data services to help you further your data analysis, exploration, engineering. And we do see that over time, additional Power BI SKUs are also likely going to become affected. Now, Microsoft is shooting for feature parity in Fabric against a lot of the services, and they got there a lot of the times. There's a handful of caveats. But if you are currently either exploring or on premium, chances of you being affected are very, very high. Now, if you're just using Pro or PPU, you remain unimpacted. If you're currently a sovereign cloud customer, Fabric isn't actually available for you to use today. So you can continue to use Power BI Premium if that's the case for you. And also worth noting that if you're just using Power BI Embedded, that's unimpacted. But we have seen customers migrate to Fabric anyway, because like I said, there is feature parity for the embedded suite of tools. So what I'll do now is I'll hand over to Geoff to talk through some of our migration planning and support assistance that we offer to our customers at the point where they've decided to migrate to Fabric.
Right.
Geoff,
Thank you,
over to
Artie.
you.
Thanks. Let me share my screen. Oh, sorry, that's a demo for later. Okay. All right. So to move to Fabric, we've got a 4-step migration process, and initially we kick that off with discovery and requirements. So we'll have a look at your Power BI Premium SKUs, look at things like if you're using auto scale, what your monthly costs are. We have a look at your usage and monitoring. We look for trends in how you use that capacity. If you're using it full tilt all the time, if you've got overages or going under capacity, it's an opportunity to look at your DevOps life cycle, especially in Power BI, and if there's improvements to be made there. And additionally, we look at things like your users and workspaces. So which workspaces are going to move across to Fabric? And with users, we look at the types of users. So are they developers? Are they report viewers and so on? Because that really plays into what SKU we might select for your purposes for Fabric. So that's part one. Then we move on to part two, which is really around Fabric SKU alignment. So we evaluate the workloads you are required for to move to Fabric. We do a lot of cost modeling, and then we come up with SKU recommendations when we move to Fabric for you. And then part three is really around the Azure service design. So it really is that opportunity not just to look at Power BI, but to look at your Azure services and have a look at the cost of what those Azure services are. And then we see if those services align well to the Fabric services, and then we come up with some consolidation recommendations that might be suitable for you in the future. And then finally, we put together a detailed step-by-step plan to move you to Fabric. So that includes establishing Fabric capacity, if we need to include the pause and resume script to stop and restart Fabric capacity, installing things like Fabric capacity monitoring, and importantly, moving your workspaces to Fabric. So there's a manual path and there's an automated path. And then what post-migration testing makes sense to move you to Fabric. So all these 4 steps, we've been very successful with our clients getting them to Fabric. Some of the key considerations that come up really are around migration patterns. So how many how many Power BI Premium workspaces do you have in place now? And are we going to move them across using the manual capability just through the admin portal? Or do we utilize the automated path and script that up through notebooks? And if we would consider if you've got 100 plus, we'd probably want to script that up in a notebook and go down that automated path, as opposed to doing it manually just through the admin portal. Then we look at things like pay as you go. So we have a think about, do you just need to run your capacity in business hours, or do you need to run it full tilt for the month? And then we look at reserved instance, and reserved instance can have quite a lot of savings if you're locked in on a particular capacity for a 12-month period. So if we have a look at the Fabric SKUs as a worked example below, we've got F32 and F64, and you can see on a per annum basis, an F32 is about 91K per annum. This is in AUD excluding GST, and an F64 is around 183 grand. That's just paying month by month for 12 months, pay as you go, not stopping your capacity at all. And if you move to 1 year reserved, you get about a 40% saving on what you'd pay for pay as you go. So you can see the difference there. You got 54K for an F32 and you've got 109K for an F64. And then if we take that a bit further and we look at business hours only, so with Power BI Premium, I don't think you ever had the capability to stop capacity and then save money on not using that capacity. You always had that month-to-month bill you had to pay no matter what. But with Fabric, you can pause and resume your capacity. So when we look at 12 months and we look at business hours for an F32 and F64, we're really looking at running this at 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, so a 40-hour week, which is about 174 hours per month. And doing that alone really reduce your overall costs. So if we just look at a F64, you can see you've got 3 options here. You can go pay as you go, just go month by month. There might be a reason you choose pay as you go initially, and then you want to change up or down. So pay as you go could be an option. 1 year reserved absolutely gives you that 40% saving. It's really worth locking in once you've aligned on the right Fabric SKU. And then if it suits your business, have a really good look at your business hours. So running it in business hours has a lot of savings. And with that, we just need to implement a auto pause and resume script, which isn't too onerous. Once that's in place, there's a lot of savings to be had. There's also a new Fabric Capacity Estimator, and we'd recommend using this. So we'd still do the discovery and do trend analysis. But if I talk you through a bit of a scenario here with the Fabric Capacity Estimator, so if we take, for example, a mid-sized retailer that where we've got 10 report creators, and we deploy those reports, we've got about 100 daily users of those reports. We've got a data model that's 166 gig compressed, so about a terabyte worth of data in your data estate. We look at things like doing a data refresh 4 times daily, 350 source tables into your data warehouse. And we're in this example, we'd utilize things like Data Factory in Fabric, running that 3 hours a day. We've got a data warehouse set up in Fabric. We've got Power BI with all of your reports and analytics in Power BI. And we'd also look at utilizing a SQL database in Fabric, whether that be for a metadata-driven integration framework or reference data, whatever the use case is. And in this example, for the Power BI model, we've chosen a relatively large model, 25 gig. reasonably sized for a used model in Power BI. 20 ad hoc SQL users. So in Fabric, you've got that ability to analyze your SQL warehouse, not just your Power BI models. And then we've got that SQL database active for 8 hours, 4 vCores and 5 gig. And look, we pre-filled out this capacity estimator. And the good thing about this is it gave us an estimation of an F64 SKU, but it breaks down all of those items, Data Factory, Power BI, etc., and gives you a percentage of what that SKU might take up against Fabric. So it's a really helpful insight into what might be the starting SKU for you to move to Fabric, and we'd really recommend having a shot and a play with this estimator. The other thing that's worth noting, is F64 and above. That enables you to have those 100 plus daily users, so they can read and view reports without a license. But if you decided you wanted to, if it was an F32 or lower than F64, you'd have to pay for those reader licenses. So instead of it being 10 Power BI Pro licenses to read, it might be 110. And it really depends if you've got an E5 agreement that already covers that. So we look at all facets of what people are doing in the environment, how you use it now, what E5, Power BI Pro and Premium licenses you've got in place. So we get a really good snapshot of what's going to be suitable for you in the future. I mentioned auto pause and resume before, and this really can save you money on your Fabric capacity. And to do that, we've got a 3-step process. So we would set up an Azure automation account as step 1. And then we have a couple of PowerShell scripts. And really, I know it's hard to see in this screen, but the one at the top, it's got here, I'll try and use my pointer. There's a pointer here. It's got resume, and all this blurred out thing is where it's pointing to the Fabric capacity. And then this bottom script is about suspend. So you've got resume your capacity and suspend your capacity. So 2 runbooks or two PowerShell scripts we put into the Azure automation runbooks. And then you can set up your schedules that suit you. So we've set up a schedule here that runs at 8:30 a.m. and it runs all week, Monday through Friday, and that would resume your capacity. And then we'd set up another schedule at 5 p.m. to suspend your capacity. And that way you're just running your capacity during business hours only, and you're really saving costs on your Fabric capacity that suit your business. So not too onerous, and we've got a pretty clear step-by-step process to get this in place. We really see Microsoft Fabric as an opportunity to modernize your current environment. And what we find with our clients is that they've really got the opportunity to consolidate into one platform. So beyond Power BI, we look at the Azure data services. You're running Data Factory, you're running Azure SQL, you're doing machine learning. Does it make sense to move them into one single managed license in Fabric, or do you need to keep them in Azure? So we'd have a really good look at that. And then we found Fabric to be highly collaborative. So you can do a lot of analysis, you can seamlessly collaborate with colleagues, and it really helps with speeding up workflows and improving those outcomes. And then we can transform, you can do better with your advanced analytics and AI. So you really have the capability to look at the new workloads. So you've got things like Lakehouse, data science, you've got the real-time hub and Copilot. And I'll do a bit of the demo with Copilot in Warehouse later, but that natural language query features, AI-assisted documentation and code explainers really helps you accelerate how you get into your data and do that analytics. And there's also improved DevOps. So within Fabric, there's a Fabric variable library that now works really well with deployment pipelines and Azure DevOps and makes deployment even easier than it is now. So we look at all of those things to help really accelerate our clients into Fabric. I think over
great.
to you, Artie.
Yeah, thanks so much, Geoff. No, they're really a really interesting point around some of that sort of transition from F32 to F64, where we've seen, the amount of customers and consumers and content creators start to really move the needle around the dollars and cents. Look, and ultimately, some of the feedback coming back to us from the market is that it's people feel that it's an additional step that they have to take, that Microsoft is forcing them to take. And they would rather not necessarily deal with the migration. I mean, I don't know how relevant that is to some of you on the call, but we look at it a little bit differently. This is effectively an evolution of something that Microsoft's invested in a long time. So one of the sort of glass half full views is to consider your journey into Fabric as one where you can continue to collaborate and scale and sort of broaden a little bit beyond just Power BI, which is, of course, Microsoft's intent. So now that you're in Fabric, you will have capacity to access additional services and service additional use cases for the business that you may not have had before. So we thought it's worth touching on that briefly because we find that businesses that just continue to use Power BI services and Fabric might actually find themselves paying a little bit more in terms of dollar for dollar versus the benefit that they've realized compared to when they were just sitting on a P SKU. But where Fabric really starts to shine and the value needle starts to move a little bit better is in instances where you are looking at additional services as they exist in Fabric and try and consolidate that broadly under the umbrella. So one of the things there worth considering is something like the real-time hub. So in the past, you would have needed to look at a breadth of Azure services in order to enable that and integrate them into your SQL DW or Synapse instance. It's a lot easier with Fabric to start to service some of those real-time needs. So if you're in an organization that does high volume sales, either because of your size or because of the B2C transactional nature of how you operate, you might find yourself being able to now in Fabric service use cases across near real time sort of as they're happening, employing some of the real-time hub features as well. So you can now start to respond instantly to business processes as they're happening and evolving without necessarily needing for batch processing overnight to take its place. Some of the other things we see businesses, really find value in is database mirroring. So, imagine you can now start to mirror your operational SQL databases into Fabric to once again support that near real-time query and analysis with no impact on the transactional systems. So you as an analyst can start to query things in one lake without necessarily overloading any of your prod environments at all. And that gives your business continuity and performance, both things our customers value. If you haven't had a look at Data Activator, it's a real interesting suite of tools specifically designed to support some of the near real-time alerting as well. So if you're, I don't know, imagine you're in cold refrigeration, ferrying food between your data center, distribution center, and your, Woolworths and Coles DCs. You are now able to set up alerts of things like sensors to start to monitor some of that delivery data once again in near real time. So if ever there's a temperature threshold that's been reached, you can wrap up the Data Activator feeds into Teams messages, emails, and set up a whole alerting chain for the right people in the business to get alerts and then trigger change in how they operate. Fabric Unified Admin Interface, colloquially known as FUAM, is a new administrative interface which we'll talk to and share a little bit about in just a second. But in short, it once again attempts to create a much more unified interface for most of your administration requirements. And lastly is Copilot. I mean, it's been something talked about really, really broadly, for years now in Microsoft. And it's important to note that quite often, Copilot and the various Microsoft products aren't necessarily the same engine on the back end. So In our instance, if we're looking at Copilot and Warehouse specifically, it has to do quite often with natural language queries. That's where the use cases really start to shine. So you're able to auto-generate things like DAX queries, create some simple visualizations, suggest insights. It's a product we think is going to continue to be invested in and developed quite a lot by Microsoft. And that's one that we thought would be useful to give you guys a glimpse of today in Fabric. I'll hand back over to Geoff so he can walk you through that.
Great. Thank you, Artie. All right. So let's get to it. Bit of a Copilot demo. So hope you can all see my screen here. Assuming you can, Artie? Yep. Okay.
That's a yes.
Yep. Great. So what I've done in Microsoft Fabric is I've installed the sample warehouse. So within Fabric, if you go to any Fabric workspace and go new, you can install this sample warehouse. It does it for you. It's a click and one-step process. And it's really around trip data. So in this data model, you can see I've got a trip table. And within this trip table, it's about 3 million odd records, but it's got things like tax amount, tip amount, tolls, etc. So some metrics there. It's got date, it's got some weather information, time and geography. So not an overly big model, but something good to play with. So whilst we've got that, what I wanted to showcase here was the ability to use Copilot's natural query language and see what it gives us. So the great thing about having this capability is you could be a data analyst, you could be new to this data set and all these tables and not know much about it. And very quickly you can start interacting with Copilot and get a lot of insights out of the box without really having to write much code, or even being a data engineer and having some primers to get started with your model and understand it better. So it's something I wish I had 10 years ago when I used to code away writing stored procedures, but having this capability now is just getting better and better. So if you're in the warehouse here, and I've got this query interface up the top right here, you can see Copilot. And Copilot is available in every Fabric SKU now as well. So if I click on Copilot, it opens a bit of an explainer over the side. Let's click on Get Started. It says, let's work with your data. So it gives a bit of help. It says create, it says, let me ask some questions. So we could start here if we like. If we click on Ask, it's going to do some analytics for us out of the box. So what can I ask to help me identify trends and strategic opportunities, right? So if we're starting from zero, you could do this if you wanted. All right, so already it's analyzed the model. Already it's got some smarts about it where it's going, oh, we can look at trip frequency by day. We can do impact on weather of trips, payment type trends, etc. Fantastic. And it would generate the SQL for you. For the demo today, I've put a few prompts in around questions I want to ask the data. So question one here, provide a month-by-month comparison showing the highest surcharge and fare amount and trip distance. So if we put that question in, let's have a look at what SQL this will generate for us. Right, let me copy that, put it into our interface. Look, the good thing about this is it doesn't just give you the code, it gives you a step-by-step about what it's done, all right? So it's going, I've selected the necessary columns from trip table, including fare amount, surcharge, etc. I've joined to the date table, done a bit of a group by an aggregate, etc., etc. So it gives you that nice explainer of how it's brought the data together or the query together. And then if I run the query, let's see if it aligns to what I've asked it. So we said, provide a month-by-month comparison showing the highest surcharge and fare amount and trip distance. Pretty good starter, right? So I've got month to month. I've got the highest fare amount. I've got the highest surcharge and highest trip distance in miles. And that's done in seconds just by asking a question. So not bad, not a bad start. So let's dive in a bit more. Let's ask another question. Provide a summary of payment type and payment type trends month to month. So I want to know a bit more about payment types and how the business operates there. So I'll put that in the prompt. Let's see what SQL it generates. All right, let's copy this in. All right, again, it's got the code explainer, looking at payment types by trip, by month. It brings that SQL query together within seconds. Let's see how this one runs. Yep, again. So I can see the month, I can see my different payment types, card, cash, discount. I can see the payment count and total amount processed. And obviously this is a good starter. You can build from here, but it's got the right joins. It's brought the data together for you, some calculations as well. Not too bad. I did want to test this a bit more and see how it works with a bit of vague requirements. So I put a bit of a question here. Write a stored procedure to update records, etc. Pretty vague. So what I'm looking for here is a stored procedure that's somehow going to let me parameterize something so I can update, say, the trip data and be able to work with and extend that stored proc. All right. So if I put that in and run that, let's see what Copilot produces for us. And it did it. Okay, not too bad from something vague. So it's got update trip record. It's got a series of variables that you could pass in your parameters to. Puts it in a transaction. So it's got rollback and error capturing. It's going to update the trip table by trip ID based on what we pass in. Pretty good from a vague requirement. So hopefully that gives you a lot of value. I mean, the time to value here, to get into your data, understand your data, to accelerate your programmability is something we didn't have, 2, 3, 4 years ago, and it's something that's getting better and better. So hopefully this gives you a good snapshot of where Copilot could be used across not just your data engineers, but your data analysts who might not be as reliant on the data engineering team to bring some of that scripting together for them. So a lot of advantages here. Okay, so that wraps up the Copilot demo. But there is something else within Fabric that's worth mentioning. We've got the Fabric Unified Admin Monitoring that Artie alluded to earlier, so FUAM. So what is it? Well, really it's a solution accelerator. It's optional. You don't have to install it, but it helps you monitor your entire Fabric environment going beyond just the normal capacity metrics app. So the capacity metrics app really focuses on just your capacity usage and your compute consumption, whereas FUAM really has a look at your tenant metadata, your activity logs, your capacity refreshes, and what's going on across your entire Fabric estate. Why use it? So in a big environment, you've got so many things to monitor. You've got users, reports, you've got data sets. You want to know how your refreshes are going. You want to be able to investigate where you've got issues. So the reporting suite that this brings together really helps you accelerate some of your investigation around what's going on across all your activities within Fabric, whether that be AI, reporting, refreshability. How to set it up? It's really easy. There's a public GitHub repo available, and it's got step-by-step instructions. All you have to do is set up a workspace, run the script, then all of the services are there, including the Lakehouse, the data pipeline, the Power BI report, and you just set that up for automation. You have all of this data and reporting available to you. To show you some of the insights FUAM gives you, I'll show you some of the screenshots we see. So the homepage really gives you a snapshot of where it's collecting data from. So around your capacities, your tenancy settings, your workspaces, your report usage, users, and refreshables. So it aggregates all of that data together across your entire environment. And then it brings together a suite of reports. So this one's an activity overview. So you can see your activity trends over time. You can see your Copilot and OpenAI requests, the collected activities, what the most used operations are. So you will have that ability to dive deeply into how things are used and when they're used across everything that's happening in the environment. There's also things like capacity refreshables. So you can see what are the average trends of your duration to refresh these semantic models. What's the refreshables matrix by day and time? So we even though it's optional, we really recommend that our clients install this so they can get a lot more insights and trends across their entire ecosystem that goes beyond the capacity metrics app. So I think that's it, Artie.
That's great. Thanks. Thanks, Geoff. That's that's a good sort of wrap up to the end. So as we're sort of closing out, just worth mentioning that if at any point you guys want sort of any assistance with helping you from a migration standpoint, we do have a fast start that's specifically optimized to get you to the point where you've got a very, very clear step-by-step migration checklist. Takes about a week to put together. And worth mentioning, we don't just take you through the 4-step process. The sort of the magic sauce really happens around bringing together some of those target state services in Fabric that'll help you derive more value really from your data estate in an ongoing fashion. Just picked your question up, Larry. Yes, this pack will be shared a little bit broader as well. Now, just sort of as a last poll before we jump into questions, if you'd like Geoff or I to reach out to you and talk about more some of the Fabric services, some of the migration planning, or answer specific questions as they relate to your use cases and your business needs, feel free just to click yes there, and one of us will reach out in the next couple of days. So that brings us on to really the closing few minutes of our presentation. So are there any questions from the audience? Feel free to type them up or put your hand up and we can unlock your microphone. We'll give people a minute. So Geoff, Larry's got a question whether he can continue to use Power BI Gateway with Fabric. Did you want to take that?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Power BI Gateway with Fabric. I can't remember if you've got to upgrade to another gateway, but at this stage, yes, I can come back to you on that one. No worries, Larry. Any other questions, thoughts, concerns?
Give them a minute, Geoff. We've got a few people typing.
That's good.
In the last probably few months, we've seen a rapid acceleration of people asking questions about Fabric. It's almost like last year when it became GA, people were sort of assessing the product for fit. And now they're starting to see really how it's going to come together in their environment. So Yeah, we've done more than a handful of these migrations so far. Larry had just a follow-up question. Also, our Fabric subscription is free until now. Does it continue to be so?
Yeah, my understanding is Fabric is only free for a certain period. You will eventually get to a point where you've got to pay for that subscription.
Yeah, and something that Microsoft's recently done is for anybody on Power BI Premium, which I'm assuming you might be on, Larry, you will have access to the Fabric features while you're using Power BI Premium, sorry. So if that's the case, then yeah, your chances are the Fabric services will stop being free at a point in time, but that would apply on a case-by-case basis for customers.
Yeah.
Geoff, we've got one from Dika. Hi, D. Dee's asking, can I pause resume capacity even after buying reserved capacity? Oh yeah, we see this one come up
Yeah,
fairly
yeah.
often.
So with reserved capacity, there's no need to pause and resume. Once you've locked that in, that is the cost. So it runs at that cost 24/7. You can't pause and then resume it. You've already got the 40% saving as part of the deal.
That's right. So quite often, D, it's a question around whether or not, from a financial standpoint, it makes sense to limit some of your capacity, say outside of business hours. And I mean, Deek obviously being, an agency, you're not located internationally, you don't have to follow the sun. So there's probably a conversation to have with you around how we can set up auto resume so that it makes sense, because your savings may be greater doing it that way than just going pure reserved instance. Often dependent on sort of secondary factors around number of users, volumes, things like that.
Yep.
Geoff, we've got one from Zai Hassan. Are private endpoints at workspace level available yet?
Certainly, yeah, so that's a good one actually, and one we try and keep on top of, and it seems to be evolving. You can definitely set up manage private endpoints for Fabric. What level it's at, whether it's at the capacity or workspace level, I'd have to double check. And I think it is at the workspace level though. I believe you are able to do it. I think we have done it for one of our clients. Yep. So, yep, that capability is there. Yep.
One from the audience, Geoff, is around Copilot data processing. So whether or not data that you submit to Copilot leaves the country. And look, it's a good question. And I think sovereignty is becoming a real sort of hot topic on a number of fronts, primarily for security reasons, but there are sort of other broader considerations as well. So whenever we approach, say, modern data platform build, we're often driven by principles shared by the OAIC, which is sort of the chief commissioner and sort of leading voice on these sorts of matters here. My understanding, or Geoff, yeah, did you want to take this one?
I'm not entirely sure on this one, to be honest. So does your data leave, I guess, Australian data centers is the question, isn't it? When Copilot's utilized.
My understanding that it does, and the processing actually happens in US today. And I think there was some talk of that changing in the future. So if the company policy doesn't allow data to sit externally at all, then it would probably need to get back to you on that one, if that's okay.
Yeah. And look, in Fabric in the admin portal, we'd have a look at what are the Copilot toggles, what you can turn on and off. That's going to be sensible for you. But yeah, if you've got an issue with the data sovereignty, we'd have to really look into that properly.
Yeah, and when you talk about options, it'd be good to sort of understand what options against what use cases you're after, because some of the work that we've done for customers has been to sort of localize some of the advanced analytic services that utilize AI services specifically to their sort of ecosystem. And yeah, probably the last 2 years, those questions have started to creep up since the data breaches, the summer of data breaches that we had about 18 months ago. Because you're unverified here, what I'll ask you to do is just drop me a note to that email address. Geoff and I will do some digging and get back to you with times around optionality, really against your use cases. So we'll probably need to have a preliminary chat as well.
I think there was one from Larry there around we have an E5 subscription. Yeah. So I think, Larry, that's a good start. So our understanding is if you've got E5, that typically would include Power BI Pro for all your end users. So that's a great starting point. So when you're looking at Fabric capacity, if you've got a lot of people who just read and want to interact with reports, they still need that Pro license. So it might mean you can start lower than an F64 SKU for your purposes, but it really depends on your consumption of Power BI and Premium and how you're using it now. But E5, great, good start.
Terrific. Any more questions from anyone? No, looks like we're good. Well, I just want to take this time to say a big thank you for spending your morning with us. Hope that was a useful session. To get back to, I think, one of the earlier questions, this is a recorded session. So what we will do is share the slides as PDF with the attendees for sure. So you'll see an email from me a little bit later. And in a couple of days' time, these webinars get published to our LinkedIn and YouTube channels as well. So if you're not yet a subscriber, hop on there and you'll get access to this as soon as it airs. Thanks, Geoff. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Artie. Thanks, everyone.